Because every video is someone's first, A Life Well Played is a channel dedicated to men's health and gaming. I want to facilitate a positive environment for us to get together and share our collective knowledge. This is how we get stronger. If you want to jump right into the men's health section, check out the timestamp in the description below. Also, hit the like button and subscribe. It only takes a second. There is something that Titan of the YouTube channel NTAT said that really had me thinking. He said he wished there wasn't so many games. He said he'd be happy if there was 3 to 4 big games a year and some smaller titles between. My first reaction was to buck this notion. I mean, more games is great for everyone, right? Not everyone's taste is the same, so more games give you a better chance to find something that we all like. But the more I looked at the state of the industry, the more I was thinking maybe he was right. There are so many things wrong with the gaming industry right now, and no one thing can be pointed out as the sole cause. But I really think that one of the reasons is that we have way too many games per year. Let's start by looking at some facts and some industry movements. One of the biggest goals of what we've seen for all development teams and publishers is to have fans of their games play for as long as possible. The reason for this is the longer they play, the more revenue can be generated from DLCs, microtransaction, cash shops, etc. So if most games that come out have the goal of holding on to their players, this means that the next game to arrive has a smaller chance of gaining players that are already invested in their favorite MMO, live service game, 100-hour RPG, or early access title. Now let's look at something that Sony talked about in their PS5 strategy, along with some information we gained during the Microsoft Activision court case. Sony decided to reduce the amount of first-party titles coming out each year. Their goal is to release at least 2 major titles per year that will include first-party, third-party like Final Fantasy XVI, and live service games like Helldivers 2. When this was first announced, it was met with raised eyebrows because PlayStation has been long known for their great first-party games and all their amazing studios. During the Microsoft Activision case, it was discovered via documents that Sony's first-party game production costs has significantly risen over the years and cannot sustain the company. So with that information, we can assume from a business perspective, the first-party title games like Spider-Man and Last of Us are the console sellers. They are the reason to pick PlayStation over other consoles, but it will be games like Helldivers 2 and third-party games that will bring in the constant revenue that every gaming company is now looking for. So what does all this have to do with there being too many games? Let's take a look at 2023, which has been hailed as one of the best years in gaming with the likes of Hogwarts Legacy, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and Baldur's Gate 3. These games were just some of the bigger titles. There were so many more. This sounds like a great thing. Gamers ate good last year. But when we look at the landscape, there were so many studios closed because of poor sales of their games. Now you can argue that there are bad games every year and it's not gamers' responsibility to support bad games. Well, let's take a look at some good games. Alan Wake 2 was not only universally praised, but it also won multiple awards at the Game Awards, including being nominated for Game of the Year. You would assume this game sold gangbusters, right? Well, by the end of 2023, Alan Wake sold only 1 million copies. In a year like 2023 with so many options, there were games that would have been Game of the Year that didn't even get nominated, along with games that got little attention in the years past that would have been a fun playthrough, like Octopath Traveler 2, Immortals of Avion, and Pikmin 4, which all had their fans, but most don't even remember these games even came out. Yes, this was an unusually packed year, but the issues are still the same. There are so many games hitting the market and so many games with the goal of keeping their players' attention that most games fail. WB released the highest selling game of 2023 in Hogwarts Legacy, even outselling Call of Duty, which hadn't been done in years. They also released Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which bombed hard in 2024. With this outcome, they still told shareholders that games like Hogwarts is too big of a risk and they would double down on live service games to keep their players' retention. At this point, I think Titan's statement of only having a few AAA games per year really resonated with me. I think for the health of the industry, a reduction in games should be the goal. I don't want to see more developers lose their jobs en masse because games didn't sell 15 million in their first week. I'm tired of seeing fun games get ignored or crapped on because they're not the next Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate 3. We've gotten to the point where there are so many games on the market that fun is no longer the entry point. There are a ton of fixes that need to happen in this industry, but I do believe if we have less games, then people will have more time to play and see the value in the games that are there. I'm an 80s baby, so when I was a kid, we only had a few games to play. This was the case for a long time. When you think about the fond memories you had with some games as a youth, it was because you spent so much time with them. When players talk about their time with Skyrim, they forget there wasn't multiple blockbuster games to play every month of the year like it is now. So when you started playing, you played for years, took breaks to play one or two other games and went back to it. When Starfield came out, you had 15 other high-profile games you could be playing, so your tolerance is very low. I remember when Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic released, it was one of the buggiest games ever, but you will never hear a fan complain about it because it was such a great game and there wasn't 100 other options to pull your attention. Now, I'm not saying it means you should accept crap just because, but what I am saying is we don't give most games a chance to fall in love with because we're just off to another. Just think, in 2024, we got Palworld on January 19th, which broke records on Steam. And players were screaming how fun and refreshing the game was. 2 weeks later, the game lost 3/4 of its player base as everyone moved to Helldivers 2, which drops February 8th. This is how games are now. They are not loved like they used to be. They are played and discarded. Most of the time, having choice is a good thing. Consumers should have choice, but what's happening is the opposite. Creativity is stifled because the risk is too great, so that is relegated to indie games, and AAA games go into this copycat state, which is why PlayStation games over the past 5 years plus have been described as dad walking simulators because all they do is follow the same structure, because if it ain't broke, why fix it? People are still buying them, so let's keep making them. Finally, let's talk about backlogs. This isn't anything new. Gamers have been accumulating a backlog for years, and last year made it even worse. Let me share a bit of what I played last year and what my backlog looks like starting 2024. Last year, I played Monster Hunter Rise, Atomic Heart, Ghostwire Tokyo, Marvel's Midnight Sun, Redfall, High on Life, Hogwarts Legacy, Destiny 2, Diablo 4, Lies of P, Pokemon DLC, Starfield, and Fire Emblem Engage. So starting my year, my backlog from last year was Baldur's Gate 3, which I beat a couple of weeks ago, Immortals of Avion, and Star Wars Survivor. Those are just the games that I already bought. I have about 4 other games that I was interested in playing as well. There is no reason why I should have such a larger backlog, and to be honest, I will never catch up. If I named all the games that I wanted to play but have yet to play, we would be here all day. I used to buy and keep RPGs that had a ton of replay value for me, like Skyrim, Mass Effect, and Dragon's Dogma. I still do, but my ability to play or do more than one playthrough is getting harder and harder each year. Yes, I want to replay these games, and some I do, but it seems like as soon as I'm ready, there's another game around the corner. As I mentioned, I spent Christmas through February working through Baldur's Gate 3. I just beat Immortals of Avion. I would love to start Star Wars Survivor, but Dragon's Dogma 2 will be out in less than 2 weeks from the date of this recording. As I said, there are just way too many games on the market to play. Just food for thought. I think I'll make this a series, and this will be part 1, and I will break down what I feel are all the major issues with the gaming industry today. What do you think about the state of gaming? Do you think there are too many games to choose from, or do you think we're in a good space for choice? Let me know in the comments below. In today's men's section, I want to talk to my young men and talk about life planning. These will be guidelines you should follow if you plan on having a family someday. So first things first, when you're in high school or even college, you need to decide a career path. This has always been important, but even more so now because things have shifted so much. 30 years ago, you could go into college not really knowing what you wanted to do, and it was marketed as a place that you could experiment and find your calling. That is the worst thing you could possibly do in 2024. With college debt basically making it impossible to get a foothold, it is much better to do your research into what field you want to go into earlier and decide the best path forward. If you can break into the field without accumulating the college debt, that would be the route I would take. If you can avoid it, make sure you minimize the amount of debt you collect by any means you can. This may include going into a 2-year school first, then transferring, finding a cheaper school that may not be a big name school, or even staying in state. Make sure you do your research into the career you want. With AI touching all facets of jobs, you want to make sure your path won't be easily replaced in a few years from now. From a mindset perspective, you need to stay firm in your decided path. Part of your plan to have a family will undoubtedly require you to find a love interest that could possibly become a wife one day. The reason a strong mindset is so important is because you will run into young ladies who will attempt to get you to deviate from your plans and goals. This can be difficult to see because she may be highly attractive and showering you with attention. Like in all areas of life, there are people who will like nothing better than to take advantage of you and your hard work. So there will be those who will push you to do more for them to the detriment of yourself. You need to quickly identify these young ladies and remove them from your path. The way you will know is if she is constantly attempting to get you to change your plans, spend a little more than you budgeted, or do things that get you off track. With that in mind, you also need to think about your location. This is a difficult one because you will need to have some foresight, given that you will have to consider things that won't come into play until years later. You may want to live in a city where you can be closer to better paying jobs, shopping, and generally things to do. But what I would advise is to check out the surrounding areas first. When planning a family, you will have children at some point, and this may be 5 to 8 years after you start your career, but you don't want to put down roots and realize after you have your first child that the area is not really safe or that the school systems are poor. I have seen many parents have to move no more than a few years after buying their first home because they were not thinking about the type of area that they wanted to raise their children in. As a father, this will be a vital decision. If you ever wonder why you see family move out to the outskirts of major cities when they start a family, let me explain why. Starting a family is expensive, and taxes are cheaper outside of major cities along with housing. School systems tend to be better and the crime rate typically lower. These are all major factors when providing for a family and raising children. 2 other future ventures I want to point out that a lot of people ignore is future proofing for your children and retirement. You want to set money aside for whatever path your children decide to take. This doesn't necessarily mean college, but it could be a business startup fund or setting them up with a down payment for a home depending on which direction they end up taking later in life. Either way, you want to put your children in the best position possible to succeed. Retirement is one that seems so far off that you feel like you have plenty of time or that your 401k will take care of it. I'm here to tell you that that will not be enough. It is recommended that a couple save 10 times their combined annual income. I'm not even sure if that will be enough with prices continually to climb regardless of inflation. So take the time to start putting something back and look into investing. These are just some small tips that will help you really plan out your future if you're looking to settle down and have a family. Remember, you are the hero of your own game. Make the most of it.